Okay.
I'm here.
Guys,
We can start.
we can start. Mark
Mark's here
Beckett's here.
now.
He's on. Okay. So guys, hey, first and foremost, can't believe it. It's September 1st, right? Insane. Kurt, good to see you, man. I just saw you on here. Don't try to hide. It's good to see everybody on here. You guys can, keep your cameras off or turn your cameras on. It helps me, gives me a feeling that we're talking in a room again together. And hopefully we'll be able to do that again sometime soon. When we do our meetings with our team, we always kind of share some tell me something goods, right? So I want to share tell me something good I'm excited about. I just settled on a investment property on the Shenandoah River that originated because I put a post about how I was looking at property, riverfront property, and somebody from our investment group, Lee, who's not on here, sent me a bunch of properties as just like, hey, you might want to consider this area. And on there was a coming soon. And I was able to go out to this coming soon. I would call the agent. I said, is it okay if I walk the property? They said, yes, it's okay if you could feel free to walk the property. I met the owner there. She kindly let me inside the house. And then I was able to start negotiating this property before it even hit the market. It did eventually hit the market because I think they were worried that, there wouldn't be any other competition there. But put this property under contract on the river, kind of a little dream for me to give to my parents. So we could do a little fishing together, a little camping together, a little, family time together. So I feel blessed that happened today. And it all originated because of the network. And so we always say the power is in the network, the power is in the relationships of people that are here. I know that typically when we're in a room, we have the ability to really share more and collaborate more. And I really prefer this meeting environment versus the webinar environment, because when it's the webinar environment, I just feel like it's a couple talking heads and there's no collaboration. So feel free to collaborate in tonight's discussion, right? Just as an introduction, my name is Rob Chevez. I'm the facilitator of CAZA Reston, right? Started this little group 13 years ago with 5 people. It's now grown to over 13,000 members, right? We've got 10 different chapters. We're about to launch Grid Austin with Wendy Papasan. So for those who don't know who Wendy is, she's amazing. And I'm so excited to have her as a partner, right, to helping launch Grid Austin. And I feel blessed because I've got some partners out on here. I've got Mark Beckett, right, who Mark is the original OG. He was a member of this group 11 years ago, which is kind of crazy. And he was just a member in the audience, just like people are here. And one day
you scammed me onto a stinky bus tour.
That's right. Foreclosure bus tour back in the day.
Right.
And then he said, hey, I love smelly, moldy houses.
Who doesn't?
And I want to learn what you do. Show me what you do.
That's right.
I want to come work for you. And I was like, dude, I can't afford you. You're way too smart and I can't afford you. And he said, no, I just want to learn. And so the next thing I know, Mark's and I are working side by side together, and we do a ton of
syndicating deals.
Yeah,
syndicating deals. Syndicating deals.
That's right. That's right. And with tonight, it's a good segue, Mr. Beckett. Thank you so much. We are going to be discussing how to syndicate deals and how to use your self-directed IRA to help invest in those deals. And but Mark, I want to really quickly introduce Danielle, right? Danielle is kind of the new generation that's coming up. She's really working with a lot of our investor and developer clients and really pouring into them. So I'm excited to have her on here as a co-host, and she'll add commentary and help manage a lot of the comments that might be coming or the questions that might be here. And Mark, why don't you introduce yourself real fast, and then we're going to start into this thing, and we'll get started. Okay?
Yep. So, like Rob said, Mark Beckett. I've been a part of this group for a little over 10 years. So we've been kind of doing stuff for the past 10 years in the investing space, rehabs, rentals, hard money, syndication, kind of wherever we can slot ourselves in, which is why I love this network. We find things to do, right? We get business from this. Other people in the room are doing business with each other. We know that the larger this network gets, the more business that we have to do. So it's been a tremendous resource for me and for us. While I personally focus on our investment business, the only thing I do for money is either renovating houses or working on somebody else's. We have a construction division where we do pre-sale renovations for our listing clients and a few other renovation jobs for other select clients. If anyone ever has need for that kind of service, let me know. Happy to help with that. But that's what I'm doing here. Just looking for deals. Anybody's got a deal, looking for partners, we do that. Looking for construction work. If anybody's got that where we can be of service, let me know. That's why we're here.
Awesome. And what I want to let everybody know is we've been doing this a long time, but we never claim to be gurus. We're kind of like anti-guru, right? We're all about collaboration and connection. And as we talk through this topic tonight, if you feel like you've got tidbits to contribute, you know, Lee Johnson, if you got, because I know you'll do a lot of stuff. If you got stuff, Kurt, Morton, to contribute when it comes to syndicating deals and doing self-directed IRAs and using that money, please feel free to contribute. Mm-hmm. And then the rest of you take note of who's on here and connect with these people. This is the way for you to also build your investment network, right? So that's why I said it. Put in the chat where are you from. Put in your contact information. If you got a deal that you want to share, post it in the chat, right? And it's a great opportunity to be able to just kind of let everybody else know who's doing what, right? So with that, syndicating deals and self-directed IRAs. Let me just kind of bring up this slide. Bear with me one second. That's not what we want. That's the 404 I was getting. There we go. So tonight's topic, syndication, self-directed IRAs.
Yep.
We already did our leader intros,
yep.
Right? And member intros, we're giving you the opportunity to put it into the chats, right? We want to, for sake of expediting time, I think putting it into the chat, putting your email into the chat. If you got a deal that you want to share, put it into the chat. We'll make sure that everything gets recorded there, and the rest of you should be taking notes. If you have a question, put it into the chat or unmute yourself and contribute. Like, don't be shy. Feel free to contribute. Okay. Okay. Legal stuff. Mark Beckett, you always do the legal stuff. You're not a CPA, are you?
All illegal. Every last bit of it.
Yes. This is.
Yeah, I don't know. It's not illegal, but we're not telling you what legally to do, right? We're not attorneys. We're not accountants. Anything that you do, you need to vet with professionals before you invest with people, before you buy things, before you believe anything. Check it out, right? That's all that is.
100%. Okay. So what is real estate syndication, right?
Yeah.
What is real estate syndication? Mark, how would you classify real estate syndication? What would you say it is?
So we kind of got here at this part of the year after talking about kind of the other ways to raise money, right? The traditional ways. We've talked about partnerships earlier in the year. We just talked about hard money lending last month, and that's how a lot of people fund their renovations, right? You find somebody to lend you some money. If you've got, the 20, 25% of the project funds, you can get the other 75% from a bunch of people out there ready, willing, and able to lend you money. Kind of what this topic then covers is, well, what to do if you've got a good deal, big deal, it's going to make a lot of money, but you don't have that 25% of what it needs for the equity piece that you can't get from a traditional lender, be that a bank lender, a hard money lender, money that you can't get with a regular loan. And when I say a loan, I mean money that you get in exchange for pledging the property as collateral, right? Everybody kind of gets how that works. Same thing as your regular mortgage. I borrow money from the bank in exchange. If I don't pay them back, they get to come and take the house. That's how a loan works. What syndication is a way for you to get money from strangers, basically, to cover that 25% maybe, or whatever it is that your regular bank doesn't fund, or if you choose to take no loan at all, a different way to raise money. So syndication is a partnership where you're getting funding from people who are not a lender, who aren't your friends and family, and it's not coming from underneath your pillow in your own personal bank account.
That's right. That's right. So
So-
then let's talk about self-directed IRA.
Yeah.
Right. So let's define these terms.
So you do a lot with a self-directed IRA. Why do you have one? Where did you get it, and what do you do with it?
Oh man, I love the self-directed IRA as a wealth building tool. Right. I really believe that these two topics combined is like rocket fuel for somebody's ability to do bigger deals and create wealth. So story on this was I was an executive recruiter for 7 years. I was a partner in that business. I had a simple 401k through that business. When I left that business, I had another investor, fellow investor, say to me, "Hey, have you thought about taking that simple 401k and converting it to a self-directed IRA that you can invest in real estate?" I was like, "You can do that? Like, you could do that?" And they're like, "Yeah, you could totally do that, right?" And they then educated me a little bit on the power of being able to convert this and put the money with a custodian, right? A self-directed IRA custodian. There's a lot of them that are out there. The 800-pound gorilla that I use is equity trust. There's pros and cons with equity trust. Some people don't like them because they could be a little slow on with some of the documentation. But honestly, I've had nothing but a great experience with them personally.
Mm-hmm.
And so my simple 401k money I just pushed it into this self-directed IRA, which then gave me the ability to invest in real estate, right? And I've lent money from it, and we'll go over what we could do, but I've lent money out of my self-directed IRA to people. I have purchased property in my self-directed IRA, and I've invested in businesses, right, through my self-directed IRA. And syndication is one of the things that you can do, and you could pool other people's IRA, self-directed IRA money to be able to invest together. And that's what tonight's topic is going to be about, right?
Yeah.
And by the way, I don't know if Danielle
traditional-
and if you guys are monitoring the chat, because I see people commenting. So
Yeah, I am.
awesome.
For sure.
Cool.
like a traditional IRA, though, right? It's not meant for you to use today for yourself, right? These are your retirement funds, so you can't just take money out and go and buy a car with it, right? It has limitations.
There's limitations. We're going to go through those limitations.
Okay.
So we got them. Right. Okay. So I've already said this. You combine these two concepts and literally the world opens up, right? Your real estate investment world opens up. So I've got a little example here, right? Let's say my buddy here, Mark Beckett, finds a deal, right? And it's $1 million, right, for this deal. And he doesn't have all the money, or he doesn't want to put down all of his own money. He wants to spread the risk a little bit. And he's identified this particular property, and we're going to call him the sponsor, right? He's the guy that is literally going to, put this deal together, and he's essentially responsible for the day-to-day operations. And I want to see that Mark, let's say I'm somebody that wants to invest in this deal. I want to see that Mark's going to put some skin in the game, right? So maybe Mark has $50,000 that he maybe has in his self-directed IRA, or possibly in his account, and he wants to invest $50,000 in this deal. And so he still has to raise 95% of the money, of the equity, right, for the down payment in this deal. And so this is what Mark was referring to before. He's going to go to people, right, that might have an interest in investing in this deal, right? And so he's going to put together, what's it called, Mark? What are you going to put together?
So there's a lot of different names for it. I call it the pro forma that explains the deal.
The private placement memorandum.
Private
Right.
placement memorandum is another term you'll hear. There's a lot of kind of jargony stuff. People talk about the capital stack. I'm looking for private placements for my capital stack. That's the money is really what they should be saying. I need to raise money, and you may be getting some of it from the bank. You may be bringing some of it yourself, but you can't get it all from the bank and you don't have it all from yourself. How do you get strangers, people who aren't already related to you, to give you money and invest in your project? Notice I didn't say lend. I said invest in your project, and we'll talk about the differences in a couple minutes. They are somewhat significant. So
No, just keep going, Mark. Keep explaining, and I'll go on this.
I guess the primary difference, the biggest difference in syndication versus a loan, and they typically go together, by the way. Typically, if you've got a big enough project that needs like $1 million to do your 8-unit condo conversion in DC, and it's going to cost $4 million, and you can get $3 million of it from a bank. Now you've got $1 million left to go to fund the acquisition and construction. You've only got 50 grand, but you've found a killer deal. Where do you get the rest of that money? That's where syndication comes in. But you will get a traditional loan for the majority of that funding from the bank, that 75%. You would pledge the property as collateral for that loan, just like you would with any other traditional mortgage, regular deed, mortgage, all of those docs, and you'll get your loan. And they'll say, great. Now, when you get the rest of this money, or usually you have to have the equity identified when you get your bank loan. They'll say, well, when you're ready, we'll give you your bank loan, and then you show up and you've got your cash. So syndication allows you to go to other people and say, hey, if you will invest in my cool deal, here's that pro forma, here's that that projection, whatever you want to call it, of your deal. I will give you some kind of return on your money. And so the rest of it is really just terms, and those terms can be anything you negotiate. How long you may need to keep that money for, how long until they're going to start getting any kind of return on the money. If there's any guaranteed amount of the return, we'll talk about some of the structures for guarantees and splits and that kind of thing. But all syndication is saying to people, you've got money, I've got a deal, I want to give you a return on this deal, and here's what the deal looks like. And if you agree and if it makes sense for you and your investing strategy, then you may buy into this project, and you'll be subject to the terms of the deal. But it's not a loan, and that's where it gets really important, because there are far fewer guarantees for your investor than there are for a lender who has your property as collateral. All your investor has is what you've given them. Whatever documentation you've given them, whatever information you've given them, that's all they're going to have to go on. That's what they're investing in. And they are largely then investing in you as the sponsor. So that's why Rob made a big deal to say, well, the sponsor is a big part of the presentation. They want to know what you've done, how many of these you've pulled off before, who else is in on this deal, what really does this deal look like, and are you just guessing at value, or do you know value in this area because you've done 10 of these other deals before? All of those things will be important. So all of those things need to go into your presentation. It needs to be as much about really the person raising the money as it is about the investment. Of course, the investment is important, but because it is largely unsecured, that's a big deal.
100%. And so maybe we can mute somebody. There we go. I muted David. Okay. So let's just talk about just a very simple way to do it. Like there's a lot, like Mark said, there's a lot of different ways that you could structure the deal, but we're going to go over two very simple ways. A really simple way would be just a straight split, right? You can say, and it's pretty easy. It's just how the name suggests, right? You're just going to split money across the board, and you could say, listen, I, as the manager or as the sponsor, I want 20% profit on this, right? And 80% of the profit and cash flows are going to go to the investors, right? And that would just be a straight, that would just be a straight 80-20 split, right? That's a really simple way to do it. You don't, I don't see this done all that often this way, but it's a simple way to do it. And there's pros and cons to it, right? One of the pros is that you could have a pretty big upside as the investor, right? But what we normally see, and I'm going to show you the next one, is what we, let's see if it's on here. What we normally see is kind of a cascading waterfall effect, waterfall plan. So let me just jump on here real fast. This is just really simply saying, hey, 20% is going to go to the person that syndicated the deal. 80% is going to go to the investors. It's just a simple way of saying that, right? Okay, another way is to structure it as a waterfall. And this is how I commonly see it. And normally what Mark might do is go to his investors and say, hey, David, I'm going to give all my investors an 8% preferred return, which in essence just means, it doesn't guarantee an 8%, but in essence it means that you're going to get the first 8% of any cash flows and any profits that come out of this deal. And anything after that, I, the sponsor, depending on how I've set up the waterfall, will get a portion, right?
And
so
it's not 8% of the money, it's an 8% return on your money.
Your money.
Right?
That's right.
So if you've invested $100,000, the first $8,000 during the period during which we're taking money out goes to you. And then we have terms that say, okay, what happens to every dollar after 8,000? Because the first 8, giving you your 8% return, goes to you, investor. And that can be one investor, that could be 10 other investors, right? But they all get their return on their money first as the preferred return. And then there are rules for what happens to whatever's left over after that.
Yeah, it's essentially what your operating document kind of spelled out, what you promise people, right?
Right. Yep.
So, okay.
And so, and back up one slide, because there's kind of something important there at the bottom. Mark, as a general partner, does not get any piece of that. It is a preferred return. So as the sponsor, the risk I'm taking is I've promised my investors a minimum return on their money. And I'm saying I won't take a penny out of this deal until you've gotten your preferred return. There are obviously caveats, and again, this is all negotiable. It will be whatever is agreed upon between the investors. But a lot of times what you'll see is a management fee in there for the sponsor that says, all right, this is going to take a couple years to get through this deal. So by the way, you guys are all going to put in your $1 million. I'm going to put in my 50,000. I'm going to borrow $3 million from the bank. And out of all that money, $50,000 a year of the money that you're investing, by the way, is going to go to me to kind of manage this project and manage all this stuff. But then after that, when the money really starts coming in a year, when we start selling or renting or doing whatever we're going to do with this asset, then the first $8,000 goes to you as a return. Then after that, we'll have another kind of break of the remaining money. And so one of the first things you might wonder, well, why would you do that? Why would you give up all of the money to somebody else? Well, remember, out of $4 million, I'm borrowing 3, I'm getting $1 million from other people who have no guarantee that they're going to get it back, and I am maybe bringing 50. The sponsor actually is taking very little risk. Everyone else is taking the risk on this deal. That's why you have to, it's whatever you negotiate, but that's why normally you have to show your investors, all right, when this does come good and the money comes in, you're all going to get your money back first, then you're going to get your return, then I will start taking some profit after that. It's because you as the sponsor have not taken much risk, so you really shouldn't be taking much money up front. It's all what you negotiate.
Now, what this does, though, is it lights a fire, though, under your butt, Mark, right? To get something above and beyond that 8% pref, right?
That's right.
You're doing it for a bigger payout. Yes, you're going to get your management fee, but that's, that's not enough to really cover what you want to do out of this project, right?
Correct.
So you're going to work hard in order to really squeeze the profit out of this deal.
Yeah. Hey, Rob, we have a couple of questions.
Sure.
Really quick. So the first is, if I have a rental home and I sell and I want to use the funds from the 1031 exchange to participate in a syndicated deal, or can you? If so, is that possible?
I believe you can. Let's defer to somebody like Lee Johnson, who's done more syndications. Lee, you on here? Do you know?
Yeah, it depends. And sorry, that's the best answer that you can give, because when you're doing a 1031 exchange, right, the selling entity and the purchasing entity have to have the same name. Second, when you're doing a 1031 exchange, you have to know the asset that you're going to be moving into prior to the sale. So it's going to be quite difficult for you to take money from an asset sale and then move it into a syndication and then be able to apply the 1031 rules.
Yeah, the timing is going to be tough, right? For sure.
The timing is going to be tough, but there's something called like a reverse 1031 where they can set it up and hold the monies in for you. But it's quite complicated, and it also incurs additional capital risk.
Got it.
Because you got to pay for that.
Our 1031 guy.
Bill Moran.
Is it Bill Moran? I thought there was another guy who's been to a bunch of events that specializes in 1031.
Bill.
All right. Well, there you go. Well, put him up there, because that is a good question. I don't know if you can go from a hard asset like a rental unit and invest in syndication units. It's not really a hard asset.
Well, and the other thing we're going to get to is they have to be an accredited investor, right?
Well,
and so
that's a whole other issue, but yeah.
Yeah. So we'll look at that right now.
But guys, you could work with sophisticated investors, and you could typically have about 35 of them come along for the ride. So the SEC has also recently changed the definition of what an accredited investor is.
Doctors,
I think it was last month.
more.
Sorry?
Tell us more.
Well, I just got an email yesterday that they've kind of sort of, if you're working with operating partners who have put together syndications, you can be classified as a sophisticated investor. But it's typically you only can have up to 35 sophisticated investors, and those investors are going to be the ones who don't qualify for accreditation. So accreditation says that basically, as an individual, you have to have made $200,000 in income the prior 2 years, or as a married couple, $300,000.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have to have a net worth where you don't include your primary residence, right, of $1 million.
Yeah, I think it's or. Right, it's not and, it's or. So you either 200,000 or net worth of $1 million.
Yeah, not including your primary residence.
Not including your primary. Yep. And I've got a slide on that here in a little bit.
Yep. So yeah, we'll come back to accredited versus other kinds of investors maybe in a second, and get a definition there. Okay. Well,
one more quick question that was in the chat. When do SEC rules come into play when pooling funds? Do you need to work with an accredited investor with SD IRA, or I understand I can't live in or work on an investment? Sounds like that doesn't apply to profit from building equity.
Well,
is this maybe a little bit too early in the deck to answer the question?
Yeah, I think both of those things come up actually.
Yeah, they're both going to come up.
More to come.
Yep.
So Mark, once you reach that 8% threshold, right, what happens?
Yep.
Whatever we put in the document, right?
It depends on what you've negotiated. But typically, once the investors reach that minimum threshold for their preferred return, now you as the sponsor can start getting something. You can justify some split going to you as the sponsor and back to your other investors. So that first $8,000 on the 100 check goes out. You've got that money. Now there's 10,000 left over. Now what happens to that other?
And you could set it up so that, between 8, just as an example, between 8 to 14%, then it's going to be a 70-30 split, right? 70% is going to go, to the investors. 30% is going to go to Mark or the sponsors, and that's how you could set up that part of the waterfall.
And
right?
basically what that means is I promised you 8. And if I can get you more than 8, then you should be happy. If I can get you a 20% return on your money, you shouldn't care what I'm keeping on my side, right? So as the sponsor, the better the deal gets, the more you get. And so those waterfall thresholds allow you as the originator of the deal to keep a larger part of those additional profits, the better the deal gets. So once my investor's gotten his 14, 15%, now I'm taking 60% of what's left over. Once he's got 20%, now I'm taking 90% of what's left over. And then, after 25, 30, 40, whatever percent you decide, you say, all right, I get the rest. If you should be happy with a 40% return on your money. If I can pay it back in X number of months or years, anything after that, goes to me. So it's whatever you negotiate, but it is quite common that usually the more you return to your investors, the larger a piece of that subsequent profit you get to keep.
Yep. Okay.
All right. So that's the point of this slide here. So the general partner is incentivized. I'm incentivized because I know the early returns all go to my investors, but the more I can bring in, or the better this deal performs, not only the more I'll make, but the bigger percentage of it that I will make. But it's got to be a good deal.
Let me ask Lee something on this. Lee, do you prefer setting it up as an LLC or as a limited partnership? Do you have a preference?
It's going to be an LLC, but how you define the limited partners from the general partners is going to be outlined inside of the operating agreement. Mm-hmm. And typically, you can set up 2 LLCs where you have a management entity. That's where you give it to the GP. And then everyone else will be invested in the LLC that will own the asset, and they'll be limited partners there.
So, and the reason why people would set it up differently, tax reasons?
Tax reasons, right? The LLC that owns the asset is probably going to be sold, and you can actually do a 1031 with that. But also from a liability perspective, right? Because there's tax consequences, as Mark was mentioning. There are going to be fees that have to be paid in the beginning. There's an acquisition fee, there's an asset management fee. Those fees have to be separated from the entity that owns the asset. But there's all kinds of different ways that you can structure this.
That's the whole thing.
Yeah.
So this does, though, get back to one of the questions.
There's so many different ways to structure it, right?
This is a good point to mention. One of the questions was, when do SEC rules come into play? It's here. It is in the creation of that private placement memorandum that sets the structure, determines how much you're investing, what the preferred rate of return is, when and if you can request to get any of your money back. All of those things need to be prepared by a securities attorney who specializes in these type of investments, because it's called a security. The Securities and Exchange Commission is the group that has oversight here. But there's really not a lot of security there for your investor. So it is imperative that they be given as much information as possible to be able to determine if this is a good investment, because they don't have a lot of other recourse as long as it's been properly structured and you've got accredited investors to invest in it. You'll be able to say, you are taking a risk here, folks. You do not have the ability to come and foreclose on the property if this isn't a good deal. You need to know what you're doing. I need to be upfront and honest with you about what you're getting into, and then you can choose to invest with the group. So it is regulated by the Securities and Exchange Commission. Those documents do need certain minimum things. They have to say certain things a certain way, and you can't just draft it up like an LLC agreement like you might have with your partner that you're going to go in with and buy a rehab deal. When you go to strangers that you do not already know, have any other relationship with, and just say, hey, I want to give you a good return on your money, it changes the level of information that you have to give them.
Well, that's why they want a sophisticated investor or an accredited investor, because
Yep.
Right.
Which gets us to here. So what these products and deals are meant for are what are called accredited investors. That's what we were talking about a second ago. So Rob, do you want to talk about those requirements for the accredited investor?
Well, Lee already summed it up beautifully, right? So you just see on here at least 200,000 each year for the last 2 years, or if you're married, 300,000, right? Or be able to show that you have a net worth of at least $1 million, right? Excluding your primary residence.
Right.
And so,
and I can just send you an email with that, I guess, then I'm good.
no, you got to get a letter. You typically have to be able to show your tax statements, or get a letter from your CPA, right?
Yep.
So,
And Mark, and could I add to what you guys are saying?
Please do.
When you start to play in this game right here, it's where you can actually get into a lot of trouble. And I have seen over the last year, lots of people haven't gotten into trouble. So when you think and talk about the SEC, you have to remember that there's a federal SEC and there's a state SEC, right? So each state has its own Securities and Exchange Commission, or you're going to have your state corporation commission. If you're conducting business within that state and with individuals who have primary residence in that state, you don't necessarily have to file with the federal SEC. The problem that you have is, large corporations, they file with the federal guys because they're going to be going and doing an IPO similar to Facebook, or Zoom is a recent one. But when you start thinking about the offering that you're going to have, right, you either will get an exception, and the two exceptions that are typically played in this game is a 506B or 506C. The 506B says that you can only conduct business with individuals who you have a prior relationship with. And 506C says that you can actually advertise your investment, but you only can work with accredited investors. So if you're in the car, you hear something that says, invest with us and we'll give you a certain IRR, you know off the bat that that's a 506C. Whenever you hear people talk about, hey, I met you and I know you for 30 days, on a handshake, then you can invest with them, but they have to document how they met you, that you didn't advertise the offering. Otherwise, you're playing with a lot of trouble there.
Yeah.
And the final piece is the SEC is a self-funding organization, in that the government doesn't give them a budget. Their budget is made up off of fines that they collect. So they're happy to go after you.
It's about consumer protection, right? You're literally getting money from strangers, and the federal and state government agencies want to make sure that you're being honest with people and letting them know the risks up front of what they're investing in.
Yeah, Lee, I didn't know that they self-funded themselves through finding people. That's interesting.
I know a couple of people right now who violated that clause, and they're not sleeping very well at night because the SEC is all over them, and it's not a place where you want to be. And
it's not a problem usually now when it's hard to find deals and everything's getting multiple offers, and if it's even remotely real estate related, it makes money. These things were all great in the early 2000s, but by the mid to late 2000s, when all these deals were blowing up and all these investors were not getting their money back, not only were they not getting their preferred returns, they weren't getting their investments back. That's when your private placement memorandum gets gone through with a fine-tooth comb by your investors' attorneys. Remember, these guys usually have decent amounts of money. They're supposed to be millionaires, or at least making multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. They probably have decent attorneys. So that's why you need to make sure you've got a decent attorney that's prepared this document before you take anybody else's money. So very good points there.
Yeah, Lee, super helpful. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. How is the documentation of the handshake go about? Like, how do you say, hey, we've known each other now for an extended period of time. How would you document that?
Me personally?
Yeah.
Oh, I put it into my CRM. I document it. It's inside of my CRM. So every time from my CRM, I can, do text messages, blast emails. Everything is inside of my CRM. So
Cool.
you have it.
Yeah, I saw Kathleen just made a really good point that the current SEC fine generating machine is coming from a lot of the Bitcoin, virtual coin activity. There's like a million different virtual coin, virtual money schemes out there. They're not all scams, but they're all schemes. And yeah, it does not surprise me at all that plenty of them are not really legit. Bitcoin is the big one, but there are hundreds of others. And that's today's current real estate of like 2005 and 2006. Everybody's doing it. A lot of weird stuff. That's why we have that slide number 3. Like, this is not a thing for you to just go in blind and just start throwing money at. Investigate the people that you're investing with. And it is why the sponsor is so important. And you don't just want to go investing with some rando.
So I'm going to want to hear from Kurt on this. Kurt, if you're brave enough to jump on, because I know you do a lot out of your self-directed IRA as well. And so anything that you want to contribute, please jump in, my friend. Right? Is he still on here? Is Kurt still on here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Awesome.
No, I mean, I haven't touched as many of these things we have commas after here. I've kept it pretty safe with my self-directed IRA, just from the perspective of making sure I don't do something wrong. But I've done a lot of real estate note investing out of my IRAs. I've kind of stayed away from any direct ownership of real estate inside of my IRA. I was always a little concerned about being in a position where something came up and I would not be able to have the funds to get myself out of it in a clean manner.
Got it.
You can't mix money. Like a rental, right? You can't pay money out of from your personal credit card to pay for repairs or any other thing like that. So it has to kind of all operate independently.
I got a quick fun little story that an investment deal that I did in my self-directed IRA. So maybe, I don't know, 13 years ago, 12 years ago, I bought a little single family foreclosure in another area, different part of the world, different town, for like $22,000, right? I put in $5,000 into this property, and then I sold it for $60,000. Made a nice little profit on it, turned it in like 45 days. I just happened to be looking 6 years ago, maybe 5 years ago on the MLS, just randomly looking at property because it's what I do. And I see, unfortunately, the same house. So the person that I had sold it to, unfortunately, had just lost it. They'd owned it for 6 years, and then they lost the house. And it was being sold by an REO agent. It was on the market now, I think, for like $40,000. And they just put a new roof on the house. And I called up the agent and I said, hey, I know this house. I see it's been on the market for about 20 days. I'll make you an offer. And I made an offer of $22,000, so similar to what I had offered before. And I ended up getting the deal. I ended up buying it through my self-directed IRA cash. The house was completely turnkey. And I get $500 a month by clockwork from that $25,000 investment where I own the asset. And I've had it just like this little game, right? Just comes in. You start looking at what the cash on cash return on is for that. It's really, really strong, right? So I use my self-directed IRA, and like Kurt said, one of the things that the only caveat is if I need to pay a tax bill, I've got to pay it through the self-directed IRA. If I have maintenance work that occurs, I've got to pay it through the self-directed IRA. If I have have to do pay a bill for something, I have to pay it through the self-directed IRA. I can never do it out of my own personal account. But they make it super easy. Like it's super simple. It's just like working out of, your bank account and you set up auto pays, right? So don't let that deter you.
Yep.
But I believe you've lent a lot of money out of your self-directed IRA. That's what you've done.
Yeah, I've done, first and second hard money notes.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah,
And
it's
have you
pretty
ever,
awesome because then, you can really leverage up, or not leverage up, but you can, multiply it up quickly because you're not having to pay taxes on those gains every year. So, like a normal hard money note, right? It's all ordinary income. So you're paying whatever tax bracket you're in on all that income. Whereas with the self-directed IRA, you can just, roll that in the next note, then the next note. And it's, all of a sudden 5 or 6 years later, you have another 20 or 30% in your IRA than you would have in a normal taxable account.
yeah, for sure. Have you ever pulled money from other people's self-directed IRA and then lent that money out?
I have, yeah. Not pooled. I don't use that word. But yeah, I have taken individual investments from people's IRAs as, going towards a first deed of trust.
Awesome. So just very simply, it's easy to set up, guys, a self-directed IRA. You find a custodian. Who do you use? And by the way, I was going to say, if anybody else uses, whoever you use, just put in the chat. Like I use Equity Trust. So who do you use, Kurt?
Yeah, I used Madison Trust, and I got a self-directed IRA with checkbook control. With being in the lending space, I didn't want to risk being in a position where I had to wait for a custodian to approve an investment when it's something I know is definitely an approvable type of item. So, sometimes you gotta make a decision in a couple of days, and you can't wait sometimes a week to get a custodial review of something.
That's a good point.
So, yep. So I got, it's a self-directed with LLC checkbook control. So it's like I have an LLC that I own that's with a local bank here, and I can make a decision and wire money the next day if I want.
That's awesome.
Real quick, so any money made from the IRA, any of the money from, like, say, rent payments, right? Does that go back into the IRA, or can that go directly to you?
Has to go back into the IRA. So unfortunately, this is a wealth building tool, right? You can't
Right.
take it and live off
Right.
that money, right?
That's
Until you get old, until you get to be Mark's age, and then you can start withdrawing it because he's just old.
that is the big distinction, right? It can't benefit you personally, which is, it's weird to say because of course it's benefiting me, it's my IRA, but it can't benefit you directly personally. It's all about the return.
Yes.
You can't live in it. You can't take any of the money and use it for anything else. It is strictly for the purpose of increasing the value of your retirement account. So to get back to that, then the person's point about assuming a Roth then is preferable to, say, a normal IRA. I think right now a Roth is the only way to go. Taxes are as low as they're going to get. Pay them now. Put all that money in taxed today. With the amount of debt we're going to have to rack up as a country, taxes are only going to go one direction in the future. So yeah, pay the tax now. I don't think you're going to find anybody recommending anything besides a Roth right now.
Yeah, I agree with you, Mark, on that.
I'm not sure how many of you know Bob Harwood, but he was a huge fan of the self-directed Roth IRA. He did a lot of lending out of his Roth IRA to the point I think he had multiple millions of dollars built up in that Roth in his lifetime. So yeah, it's pretty, that was when I met with him the first time, that was like the first thing he told me, and was like, if you do anything, do this. It has been the most life-changing thing for me in just building wealth, because it's basically, every dollar you make, you'll never pay tax on as long as you don't need it before you're 59 and a half.
Right.
It's, did you meet him at the country club? That's where
No,
that's where
actually, I don't remember how I met him. It was through referral, and I just kind of called him up one day and struck up a conversation and said I was looking to get into hard money, and he said, "Stop by my office and we'll chat."
He
yeah.
worked out of that country club, and he worked out of the restaurant there in Shirlington.
That's right. That's where you and I we had lunch. And by the way, this guy was prolific. He was a hard money lender in this area for a long time. He passed away 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago. Vietnam vet, fighter pilot guy, just self-made, never marketed. It was all referral, right? And just a charismatic guy who built up an amazing business. And I believe that the business is still in existence, right? It's just run by the family now. Is that correct, Kurt?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
So, okay, here are some of the things you were talking about, Mark. Like what can you do? What are some of the rules, right? Like all expenses of the property must be paid through the IRA, not directly by you. You can't use
No
furniture.
commingling.
What's that?
No commingling.
Yeah, no commingling, right? Income generated by real estate held in your self-directed IRA must go back in and return to your IRA. Cannot use your self-directed IRA to buy property from yourself or a family member, right? Which is kind of a bummer.
Yeah, that's right. And that's an important distinction. It's not only not just you that it can't benefit, it cannot benefit anyone in your direct family line. So yeah, right here on the slide. Who can you not give money to?
Grandparents, mom and dad, sister, direct bloodline.
Your own children. Your kids, grandkids.
But you can give it to everybody else.
You can use it to buy a condo that your kid will live in during school, but you can't give it to your kid to buy a condo that they will live in while they're in school, right?
Yeah.
So what about if you have a management company? Could you own the management company and pay the management company through your IRA investment?
Doesn't sound, say it again.
I would say
So,
no.
I would say no, right?
Yeah, it sounds pretty shady, right?
So yeah, there are certainly ways to physically siphon money out of a deal, an entity, an arrangement, an agreement, an investment, or whatever to get it back to you personally. But if the government finds out about it, they will nullify your entire IRA, tax it all to hell, pile a bunch of fines on it, and it's usually not worth it. So I have heard of plenty of creative ways of getting other things out of an IRA-funded investment, but I don't personally.
It's not worth it.
It's not worth it.
It's not worth it. You want to be able to sleep at night and not have to worry about it.
Any money it makes really needs to go back into the IRA.
So let's talk a little bit about, one of the things you could do is you could take this concept now of syndication and self-directed IRAs. And let's say Lee's got a project and I want to invest in that project. I like his private placement memorandum. He qualifies me to make sure that I'm an accredited investor, and his minimum on the investment is 50 grand. I could take $50,000 from my self-directed IRA. I can invest it into his project, and hopefully I get my 8% preferred return or whatever we've agreed on. And normally these projects, by the way, are longer term projects, 5-year long projects. Maybe he says in the private placement memorandum that the goal is to improve a multifamily property that he's purchased. And then at the end of 5 years, we're going to sell the asset. But along the way, I'm going to be getting my 8% preferred return quarterly or some kind of distribution like that quarterly. And then I'm going to have some kind of waterfall profit payout after the effect. And that money is just going to go back into my self-directed IRA. And hopefully what I've done now is I've built my net worth, right? And it's such a powerful way. And I agree with Mark. If you can pay the taxes now, like I've been, it's painful, right? Because mine is not a Roth self-direct, but I've looked at it. Just now is the time to do it, right? Taxes are going to go up, but anyhow, that's different.
Well,
so,
and I can't remember who it was. It was Londell or or maybe Lee, made the point that there is an argument to be made to have both, because the traditional will not suffer that present day penalty of having to pay taxes when you go into it. So you have more to invest. You have less to invest if you pay taxes on it right away, but you're saving yourself down the road. So you can do both.
Do you guys happen to know the maximum Roth contribution per year now?
Ooh, okay, that's a real good question. Let me
Well,
try.
for a self-direct,
57,000, depending
Say it
on
again.
how you set it up.
What was it again? I didn't hear it.
57,000.
Per year?
Yes, but
Oh,
you have to
heck yeah.
have enough business income to hit that. It's like 20% of, like if you have a small business, you can contribute up to 20% of your income.
yeah, Matt. So here's the interesting thing. So this is very
Rob.
different, right? This is different from your Roth if you're just an employee. As a self-employed person, small business owner, man, huge advantages, right? Huge advantages for us. And you could put up to 20% of your income into that, right? And so what Kurt is saying is to a maximum of $57,000. So if you just want to pile money away, which I know you're in the business of doing that right now, you should do it.
Versus the limit for a traditional, a normal IRA as an employee, Rob, you're just saying is $6,000. So I think one of the real ways to use this is if you know someone else who has significant savings in a retirement account but wants to invest in other things, you can tell them, hey, I can help you get set up with a self-directed, where you can start rolling that into a better investment vehicle and then invest with me in these great deals that I've got. You can kind of convert your own syndication partners into self-directed IRA investors. They will thank you for it, for getting them into a better way to invest their retirement funds, and thank you when you bring them good deals to invest in. So that you can double leverage what you're learning here by getting people to get into self-directeds and then taking that money and investing it through syndication into your deal.
Anybody on here have done the self-directed 401k? Anybody done?
I've helped clients get it set up for people that are interested in investing with my hard money company, where I've helped them get it set up.
Okay. Okay. And why do that over the self-directed IRA? So why do the self-directed 401k over the self-directed IRA?
I think for them, they like the idea of they could take a 401k loan if they had to, and had access to that money, whereas you wouldn't be able to do that with a IRA.
That's right. It's interesting. I don't know if you guys, when COVID hit, one of the rules that came out was that you could actually withdraw for $100,000 from your self-directed IRA and not get hit with a penalty. You guys see that? Did you guys read that?
I don't think I did hear about that.
Yeah. And so, but you have to be able to prove that you actually had hardship caused.
Right. I don't think it's not a great idea, because you are now using your future money for today's problem.
No, but it's really, this is where really looking at the tax law is important. One of the things that people don't, the tax code is this big, and most people, even CPAs just listen to know just a small portion of it. The rest of the tax code is there to help you be able to minimize your taxes. And I would encourage you guys to really start exploring, and maybe what we'll do is we'll have somebody on and really delve deep on some of the tax stuff, right? Because there's so many things. I'll give you an example. This is totally an aside. My daughter was diagnosed with Asperger's when she was 14. So we had to put her into a private school that really could help with that. And of course, my CPA didn't tell me that, nobody told me, they didn't know, right? But I started doing research on this, and I said, I know that, if you have a physical handicap, typically there are tax benefits or tax incentives for retrofitting a building or different things like that. And I was like, I wonder if there's anything like this for something like an Asperger's or ADHD or, you know, other things. And sure enough, like you could literally write off, I could write off her schooling dollar for dollar as long as I had documented proof that this was a condition, right? And, you know, that saved, I mean, that was like 40 grand a year, right? That I could write off my taxes because I did a little bit of research. So I guess that's my whole point is you guys, I want you to empower yourself with understanding that these resources are out there. The tax code is there to help you minimize your taxes. Using a self-directed IRA can do that for you, Matt, right? You're essentially putting, you know, $57,000 away and reducing your tax liability by $57,000 and increasing your wealth in the process. Super powerful. Then you compound it by then investing that money into Lee's project, and now it just starts growing, right? It just.
Hey, Rob, remember when you talked about it about a year and a half ago, reading Tax-Free Wealth by Tom Wheelwright? You recommended that about a year and a half ago, and I read it. And ever since then, it's just trying to be creative as to ways that you can move money around.
I know, man. It's like, it's amazing.
It's
right?
amazing how
It's
they've written
amazing.
the tax code to work for you.
And it was so crazy, dude. Like, I never thought I'd ever get excited about the tax code, right? I'm like, taxes? I'm like, oh! And now I'm like, I want to understand how I can save money legally using the tax code, right? It's like a game. This is a game, right?
No, it's about after reading that book, it's about finding a CPA who is also educated in those facets and then paying him good money because he's going to save you way more than you ever spend on him.
100%. 100%.
What book was that, sir?
Tax-Free Wealth.
Tax-free wealth.
Got it. Thanks.
It's a great book. Awesome. Okay. Questions. Who's got questions?
So I saw one.
Mhm.
I'm
Questions,
setting up
comments.
self-directed IRAs for children who are employees of your small business.
You can set up an IRA, not a self-directed IRA for the kids, but you could set up an IRA for the kids for sure.
Yeah, I don't know. Is there an age requirement for a self-directed?
But they have to have income, right?
They have to be a business owner.
Yeah.
It has to be earned income too. It can't be.
Yeah. I would say rather than going with these little creative things, the best thing to do for a very young person is to get them a whole life insurance policy that pays up in like 10 years and then it continues to grow. It grows forever.
Lee, I just bought my first property using my universal life policy.
Well, excellent.
Isn't that crazy? I just bought it. I just settled on it today, and I used my whole life policy as the down payment for this. And I read the book, What Would the Rockefellers Do? I posted about it probably like 3 months ago, got my wheels turning, and I used that money because I just wanted to see what it's like, right? I'm testing this. I'm like the crash test dummy of this stuff,
Yeah.
right? And it was easy to get the money out. And you know, it was my cash. I had accumulated cash in there for the last 10 years. So.
Well, I would recommend a book by R. Nelson Nash called Becoming Your Own Banker. He actually created that concept and you can't go wrong with it. You know, it costs a little bit of money to get into it, but when you start thinking about, I can never be taxed on this money ever, you start to realize that there's a different play.
Well, it's interesting because, you know, I have a side of friends of mine that are always like, oh, life insurance, like, you know, like, why would you do that? Like I'm like, listen, you're essentially I had the privilege of working for this. He's you know, probably the #1 insurance salesperson in the world for like the last 20 years running, right? Super wealthy guy. And I just saw all of his wealthy clients. I mean, I'm talking like Jordan, right? His wealthy clients investing in life insurance policies. And I was like, why would they do that, right? They got a lot of cash. And it's because you create legacy from that, right? You die, that money goes to your heirs, will go to my heirs, like my kids, tax-free, right? You can borrow against it. I mean, there's a lot of power in using life insurance as a wealth building legacy tool. And so I'm going to read that book. So thank you very much for recommending that book.
You just cracked the surface, my friend. There's a lot of ways you can go with that.
Okay, cool. It's be your own banker?
In the chat, do you mind typing it in the chat so we can all see it easy?
I got it.
This stuff is fun. I get excited about this stuff. It's crazy. My mom would be shocked, right? I thought I was going to be a forest ranger when I was little. Here I am talking about real estate and syndicating deals and self-directed IRAs. So, well, cool. Well, anybody else have any final comments or questions?
Yes, I have a comment.
Yep.
You might want to consider that you can also use the self-directed, like education or health savings accounts also to invest in real estate.
Londell, that's Londell's voice, right?
So,
Yes, it is.
Are you?
Hey, brother, it's good to hear you. So let's talk about that. I think that is
I've got
really
an
important.
HSA. How's that work? How can I use the HSA fund?
Basically the same way that you would use a self-directed IRA. As long as the funds are there and set up, you know, even equity trust or many other custodians, they actually have like information on there on how you set it up and some of the things that you can do. And the thing is, there are even a few attorneys that or CPAs that can advise you on some of the different things on setting things up. But I mean, there's a lot of information even available online on how to do this.
Okay.
Awesome.
And you can actually, if you're using like those education things, you can even like have like an education account partner with a self-directed IRA account and et cetera on real estate deals or whatever.
Got to look into that, Mr. Beckett.
Interesting.
I even do Forex trading as well as real estate investing through mine.
Actually, that's how I got started with a self-directed. I got one from Millennium Trust to do, like Forex and options trading. And yeah, that's a terrible idea. That's a good way to lose your retirement savings. I learned pretty quickly it was much better off in real estate than letting me stick around with the Swiss franc trying to day trade with it.
That was a long time ago.
That was a long time ago.
A long time
I
ago.
had a question, which was, so when you buy like a rental real estate property in a self-directed IRA, what ends up happening with like the depreciation side of things? Do you still depreciate the property? Because that was always one of the reasons I avoided it, because I was thinking, you know, that depreciation and offsetting other income, especially for a real estate professional, is one of the larger benefits potentially of owning a lot of real estate. So if you own it in the IRA, you kind of lose out on that.
You do. You do.
Chapter 17 of Tom Wheelwright's book, he talks about the best investment vehicles for self-directed IRAs. And he does say going into a syndication is not the best way because you lose depreciation and amortization, but you also have the offset because the syndication is going to generate a K1 at the end of the year. You have depreciation recapture when that asset sells, and typically it might offset, but it might not. So you want to be concerned about 5 years, how you exit the investment, and what are going to be your opportunities from there. But I agree, probably self-directed, doing hard money loans is probably the best way to go. Hard money loans and tax liens.
We got to have one of these on tax liens, Rob.
We do. We do. I've never purchased a tax lead. What's his name? Sri does a ton, right, on tax liens and notes. Okay, guys. Well, hey, it's 8:13 on what is this, Tuesday night?
Days don't matter anymore, Rob.
I know. Guys, we appreciate you. We appreciate you guys being part of the network. Hopefully this has provided you guys value. If it has, do us a favor, share it, comment about it. We're going to, unfortunately, this wasn't live, but we will post it back out. I think this is an important conversation to have. We're really big into helping our community build wealth, create legacy, create impact. And having these open dialogues like this helps do that. And I love the collaboration. This is so much better than like us, Mark, just talking heads. Like, I love having input from you guys on what you've done, really. So thank you.
And stick with us, right? Things will get back to normal when we're doing this back in a room sometime. That's where you're really going to get tremendous value. If you can be there in the room with your other investors, exchanging information, following up, growing your own personal network of other investors, it will make you wealthy. Your net worth really is equivalent to your network, right? We see it every day in so many different kinds of businesses. The more people you know that know who you are and what you do, the more money you'll make.
Yep.
It's a direct correlation.
Yep. Awesome, guys. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. And if you want to, I'm wondering if we could send some of these notes out. I think we've got this recording. Maybe we could send an email with some of this information, book titles, as well as maybe some of the different custodians that people have used in the past. Anybody know of any other custodians that they like? For the self-directed IRA, Equity Trust, Madison Trust.
Yeah, Millennium is one. Millennium, I don't think is set up for real estate. They'll do it. They'll let you invest in anything. But Equity is probably the biggest for real estate specialized investing.
I see the IRA Hub or Lub. Quest. Yeah, Quest is another one. Mm-hmm.
UDirect.
The IRA Club. Okay. UDirect. Okay. Awesome, guys. Well, make it a great night, everybody. Thank you so much. Danielle, thanks for monitoring everything here. I appreciate you.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
Okay, guys.
First Tuesday next month here, Grid Reston, right?
That's right. It's happy hour. We're going to do a happy hour Grid Reston next time, right? We'll have drinks.
We're going to start at 6:30 with margaritas. Is that
That sounds good.
Good. Let's do that.
Right. It sounds good. It'll be fun.
And then find us elsewhere at other grid events going on all over the area, right? Find them wherever you found us. Gridinvestor.com. We're on Meetup. You'll find our other locations that are run by people who we know and trust and vet, right? That are our sponsors of this event, but everybody approaches things slightly differently. Everyone
you learn different things from the way different people present.
They have different stories and different experiences, right? So they're all worth checking out. We love our other partners. They do really, really incredible stuff with their businesses and in their groups. Highly encourage you to check them out as well. So.
Yep. Okay, guys. Take care. Peace.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
See you next time.